Hi everyone, my name is Annalie Leptison and I'm coming to you today from Waterloo, Ontario. I'm really excited to share my research with you. I'm a graduate student at the University of Ottawa where I'm about to begin my PhD researching women in contemporary worship music. I hope that this presentation will give you concrete facts about a topic that you may not be familiar with and will challenge you to consider how discussions around gender and worship impact your community. My research on women on the CCLI lists will become the basis for my PhD research. At this point, my research has articulated that there is a gender imbalance on the CCLI charts. What I am excited to dive into next is why this is the case. I'm hoping to talk with women songwriters about their experiences in the industry and to continue to investigate what factors have led to this imbalance. If we were gathering in person, I would look forward to hearing your experiences and perspectives on women songwriters in the Christian worship industry. We could break out into discussion groups and reflect on how our worship systems may limit the roles of women. Unfortunately, that isn't possible today, so I will just walk you through my research and some practical steps we can take to address gender imbalance. I've included my email at the end of the presentation. Please feel free to reach out to me with any comments or questions. In order to contextualize my relationship with this topic, I want to tell you a little bit about my work over the past few years. Since 2016, I have had the privilege of serving on the Mennonite Worship and Song Committee, which has been tasked with creating the next Mennonite hymnal titled Voices Together. The hymnal will be released in fall 2020 in just a few months, and we are very excited for congregations to experience it. We have also been grateful for connections with many of you at the Hymn Society and are eager for you to engage with Voices Together as well. One of the emphases of Voices Together has been ensuring that a diversity of voices are present in the collection. We've worked to ensure that the voices of people of color, women, songwriters both young and old, and voices from around the world are present in our collection. After completing an audit of some of our previous Mennonite collections, we discovered, unsurprisingly, that women were underrepresented. We also learned that this was the case with other denominational collections. It is with this lens that I approached my work as the co-chair of the Popular Idioms Committee for Voices Together. While it was discouraging to see that the numbers of women contributors have been low historically in collections, it was also discouraging to see that in the genre of contemporary worship music, the numbers of women contributors were even lower. We wanted to emphasize including songs from women in the genre, but most of the top songs were written by men. This naturally raised red flags for me, and I became determined to learn more about the problem. In the fall of 2019, I received a grant from the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council of Canada to complete a data-driven analysis of the Christian Copyright Licensing International Top 25 lists from 1988 to 2018. At this point, I will walk you through the research that I discovered, and afterwards will lead you in discerning what these findings mean for us as worship leaders, pastors, congregants, and scholars. In April 1994, Lori Klein's hit song, I Love You, Lord, ranked #1 on Christian Copyright Licensing International, or CCLI's, list of top 25 most accessed songs. Since then, contemporary worship music has developed stylistically and theologically, becoming one of the dominant musical voices of hundreds of thousands of churches all over the world. And yet, April 1994 was the last time a solo woman held the #1 spot on the CCLI Top 25. As the genre of contemporary worship music has developed, women have struggled to hold not only the #1 spot, but any spot on the male-dominated Top 25 list. Songwriter culture has developed radically since the contemporary worship movement first emerged in the 1960s. With the popularity of icons such as Bob Dylan and John Denver, emerged a movement called the Jesus People, which sought to create worship that embodied the sound and tone of the era's popular music. In the 1970s, contemporary worship music was commercialized by groups such as Maranatha Music, a contrast to the hippie atmosphere of the Jesus People movement. As the genre became more popular and accessible, a large repertoire of music developed and worship sets became a staple of the genre. Leaders planned services that led the worshiper through a variety of affects towards an intimate encounter with God. By the 1990s, contemporary worship music was globally acknowledged as a worship movement, with significant influence from African American contemporary gospel music and groups in England and Australia. Churches became engaged in worship wars, clashing over the use of traditional music characterized by organs and choirs, and contemporary music led by praise teams and drum kits. In 1999, Christianity Today published an article titled "The Triumph of the Praise Songs: How Guitars Beat Out the Organs in the Worship Wars," declaring contemporary worship music the ultimate winner. Since then, groups such as Hillsong, Bethel, Vineyard, and Passion have come to define the genre and have brought contemporary worship music to thousands of churches across the world, where it has become a dominant language. In parallel to secular stars, Christian artists have achieved celebrity status, filling stadiums during elaborate tours and selling millions of albums every year. These key worship leaders and songwriters have come to define the movement of contemporary worship music and are instrumental in the development of the genre. This presentation provides a closer look at who the songwriters of contemporary worship music are through an in-depth, data-driven analysis of how women have been represented on the CCLI Top 25 lists since 1988. My research draws on the research methodology and coding system employed by Dr. Jada Watson and modeled on her research on gender representation in country music. I will describe her methodology in detail momentarily. Despite being a prominent church music movement since the 1960s, scholars did not start researching contemporary worship music until the mid-2000s. Research from various disciplines have outlined the theology and practice. A significant body of research has also developed around the commercialization of the industry, including the way that the genre has developed as a recording industry, its global spread through touring and media, and its reliance on media and technology for success. This research makes it evident that the genre exists the same way as much of popular music, through widespread marketing and commercialization of artists and groups. There is some research on the experiences of women in contexts where contemporary worship music is present, such as Tanya Rich's chapter titled "The Sisterhood: Hillsong in a Feminine Key," which articulates the ways that Hillsong supports and promotes the work of women in all spheres of life and work, contrary to public perception. Janelle Williams-Paris explores the impact that language in contemporary worship music has on Christian women. In "I Could Sing of Your Love Forever: American Romance in Contemporary Worship Music," she compares the intimate language found in CCLI Top 25 songs with the classic American romance narrative. Kate Bowler's recent book, Preacher's Wife: The Precarious Power of Evangelical Women Celebrities, examines how women are limited in their influence by virtue of not being able to preach in many evangelical contexts, but how they have managed to gain incredible social and theological influence regardless. She outlines that major Christian women celebrities such as Amy Grant and Rebecca St. James influenced significant social movements and Christian culture. Clearly missing in this academic discourse is research on the experiences of contemporary worship music songwriters. Questions around the experience of songwriters, their history and background, and how they are supported and funded are discussed in the popular press, but not in academic contexts. Within the gap of research on the experience of songwriters is a glaring lack of research on how women are represented as songwriters in the genre of contemporary worship music. My research seeks to fill this gap by providing an overview of how women songwriters have been represented in contemporary worship music, using the CCLI Top 25 as a source for data on top songwriters. The genre of contemporary worship music receives active engagement weekly from hundreds of thousands of churches who sing these songs in Sunday morning worship and listen to them on the radio and in personal devotion. Songs sung in corporate worship are subject to the same copyright laws as other music, and as such, require intentionality to be performed without breaking copyright laws. CCLI requires churches to report the songs they are using within a 6-month period. With this information, CCLI pays royalties to copyright holders based on how much their song is being used. Since 1988, CCLI has published a semi-annual report with the top songs that churches are using. The list of current top songs is a significant way that worship leaders find new songs for worship. Songs on the top 100 list will be encountered more frequently, leading to more frequent singing in churches and a higher reporting of use, and subsequently to repeated occurrence on the top 25 and more exposure and support for the songwriter. It is important to note that originally the CCLI lists were published as top 25 and in recent years have switched to top 100. For the purposes of this presentation, I will be exploring just the top 25 from 1988 to 2018. This study uses a data set that contains the top 25 songs from each report between October 1988 and December 2018 for a total of 60 reports and 1,526 songs. I also owe major credit to Dr. Lester Ruth and Daniel Jesse for their cataloging of these charts so that I could have access to them for my research. Because many of the songs are repeated, there are 130 unique songs on the list. The data set records the song's title, rank, copyright date, and songwriter names, and was augmented to include the songwriter's gender, ensemble type, solo, duo, trio, group, publisher, number of male songwriters, number of female songwriters, and total number of songwriters. This methodology is based on Dr. Jada Watson's work, which tracks gender trends over time by creating detailed data sets that describe gender and ensemble type. The coding system that Watson has used for her research on gender in country music includes complex variables, both biographic and bibliographic. This research has been structured to reveal gender-related trends found on the CCLI Top 25 lists between 1988 and 2018 and cannot reveal conclusions about the genre outside of this period. In order to provide an overview of gender representation on the CCLI Top 25 lists, the overall summary of the lists is presented in Table 1. This table summarizes all of the songs on the CCLI Top 25 lists from October 1988 to December 2018. The table on this slide shows that 74.4% of the songs that have been on the CCLI Top 25 chart since 1988 have been written by men. Another 17.9% of the songs have been written by male-female collaborations, with only 7.7% of songs being written exclusively by women. In order to understand the big picture of gender representation in the top 25 over time, the graph on this slide shows a breakdown of songs in the top 25 by male artists, female artists, and male-female collaborations over time. The data for this graph is based on the number of songs, not number of total artists. Over the course of this 30-year study period, the number of songs by women declined significantly. At the start of the period, women averaged 30% of the charts, but this changed at the turn of the millennium when the number of songs by women charting began to decline. At the end of the 2010s, women wrote an average of 4% of CCLI top-ranking songs. The number of songs by men reached an all-time high in October 2003 at 92%, with a gradual decline since then. This decline is likely correlated to the increased number of collaborations between men and women. Since 1988, the majority of songs on the CCLI Top 25 have either been by solo men or male collaborations, and the number of songs by solo women has declined to almost zero. The song gap between men and women was 46.2% on the first chart recorded in 1988 and has now more than doubled to 94.1% in 2019. This percentage gap reached a record high in October 2013 of 95.2%. While the rates of women charting on the CCLI Top 25 are discouraging, perhaps more striking yet is the way that women have been eliminated from the number one position. This figure outlines the songwriter gender of the number one position for each chart since 1988. Women songwriters held the number one spot a total of 4 times throughout the 1990s, making it a relatively common occurrence for a woman to be at number one. Since 1994, the number one position has been dominated exclusively by men, with only one exception. In 2017, the male-female collaboration of Brooke Ligertwood and Ben Fielding took the number one position for their song, What a Beautiful Name. Of the 25 different songwriters whose names have appeared next to the number one spot, only 3 of them are women. Figure 2 outlines the occurrence of women songwriters at the number one position in the 1990s, but not since then. One of the most striking differences between the CCLI Top 25 charts in 1988 as compared to today relates to the role of songwriter collaborations. In the late 1980s and early 1990s, most songs were written by a solo songwriter, with a small number written by a duo. This began to shift in 2003 with a decline in solo writers and a significant increase in collaborations over the following 10 years. In 2003, a significant shift in the songwriter makeup occurred when a larger number of songs were written in collaborations rather than by solo songwriters. Since 2013, the number of songs written in collaborations has further increased, with the number of solo writers declining to only 1 per chart. The graph on this slide outlines how songs by solo writers have decreased and songs written in collaboration have increased. While the number of collaborations that occurred between 1988 and 1993 was small, women consistently made up 50% of the collaborations. That number reached a record low in 2012, as collaborations were on the rise, when only 3.1% of writers in collaborations were women. At the end of 2018, 9% of people in collaborations were women. The table on this slide summarizes the male-female collaborations over this research period, indicating that of the 10 collaborations between 1 man and 1 woman, 7 were husband-wife teams. In the case of each songwriting pair, either each collaborator appears in the top 25 the same number of times, or the man has appeared more frequently for a higher number of songs. The number of men and women songwriters represented on each chart is represented in the graph on this slide. Because of the extinction of solo artists on the top 25 list, women are only being represented in male-female collaborations, and they are less prominent than men even there. It is not uncommon to see 1 woman's name alongside 4 or 5 male names on a top 25 song. It is important to note that since 1988, no all-female collaborations have occurred in the CCLI Top 25. Further, there have only been 2 songs that have had more than 1 woman collaborate on them: Forever, We Sing Hallelujah, written in 2013, and Tremble, written in 2016. To better understand how the landscape of contemporary worship music has changed over the last 30 years, the graphs on this slide compare gender representation between 1988 and 2018 through a pie chart that captures each decade. The percentage of songs by women dropped 26% over this period, from 30% in 1988 to 4% in 2018. The findings of the study indicate that gender inequality is a significant problem in contemporary worship music. This problem was prominent in the early years of CCLI and has only grown substantially worse. Several key observations from my analysis support this point. First, the CCLI Top 25 list has changed from being dominated by solo artists in 1988 to containing only 1 solo artist in 2018. Second, the majority of songs on the Top 25 list are written by collaborations among men. This figure was 72% in December 2018. Third, the majority of collaborations between 1 man and 1 woman are between family members, such as husband-wife teams. Fourth, women are not successfully collaborating with other women, nor are they being sung as solo songwriters. And 5, a woman has not held the #1 position since 1994, with the exception of a male-female collaboration in 2017. The problem of this gender inequity cannot be attributed to one single cause, although it is clear that the rise of collaborations has negatively impacted women's success on the Top 25 list. The nature of collaborations has put up a barrier that makes it difficult for women to break into the songwriting circles. In a blog post from August 2019, Dr. Jada Watson observes that repetition does not just generate hits on the chart, but it develops the sound and culture of musical genre and identity and shapes audience familiarity. Because this conversation hasn't started in most Christian circles, churches don't know what they are missing by only programming music by men. Without more exposure, leaders are unable to recognize that their culture and identity have been shaped without female voices. Churches cannot be blamed for not addressing this inequity when they have not had the opportunity to observe it. How would the sound of the church's worship change if the music of women was more part of the culture? In order to start this conversation, churches need to be made aware of the problem. The role of this research is to provide concrete data on how this inequity has developed and where the problem lies. Finding forums to address this gender imbalance will be essential in making progress on this problem. The study provides evidence that the male songwriters have dominated CCLI Top 25 charts for the last 3 decades, and women have not been successful in breaking into their collaborations. The CCLI Top 25 list is indicative of the culture of churches engaging in contemporary worship music. In order to change the Top 25 list, Publishers need to prioritize supporting women, men and women need to strengthen their collaborations, and churches need to actively choose to support music by women.
How long, when will the daughters of Zion rejoice in the house of the Lord? When will the truth come out? When will your justice roll down? When will your kingdom come and evil be undone? Oh, when will the wicked kneel? Yeah, and the abused be healed? When will our sisters speak with no more shame or fear? Oh, how long, when will the daughters of Zion rejoice in the house of the Lord?
Surely pass. Woe to the wicked ones for what their hands have done. God is our righteous judge, and He will raise us up. God, would your daughters see themselves as they really are, clothed in righteousness, clothed in honor, in dignity, and in power from on high? God, would we walk through this world in the authority and the power that you've given us, carrying no shame, owning no fear, but fully aware of your great and deep love for us. Oh God, would the world bear witness to the glory that is reflected from us, that we do carry your glory. We are made in your image. You love us, you see us, you know us, you accept us, and you approve of us. Would our mourning be turned to dancing? Would our weeping be turned to laughter in the house of God? Let your justice roll down. 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 Oh, let your
That is a lot of information. What I would like to do now is work through the preliminary theories I have on 2 key questions. How did we get here, and what can we do about it? In April of this year, I released an infographic that summarized this research, and I was blown away by the response. Among many, many supportive and encouraging comments, there arose comments by those who genuinely didn't understand why this mattered and were trying to engage with good intentions. Many people raised the theory that women just aren't writing songs, which is how we got here. They theorized that if women wrote more good songs, we would sing them, but only men are writing good songs. This critique comes from a place of not understanding how the Christian music industry works. Let me elaborate. The best songs do not rise to the top. Rather, the songs with the most marketing, promotion, and endorsements rise to the top. Most record labels and publishers are working primarily with men, meaning most songs by women don't get promoted to the level that they would have the chance to top the CCLI lists. The best song doesn't win. The song with the most money thrown at it by the most powerful labels and publishing houses wins. Quality or ability to connect us with God through worship largely isn't what makes a song well known, but rather it is who endorses and covers a song. Exposure and familiarity are the key factors that lead a song to becoming widely sung in the worship music industry. As a worship leader, you may be thinking that you are choosing the songs that will best serve your congregation, but in reality, that music was chosen for you by a small group of individuals with a lot of power, who are determining what audiences should hear and how much they should hear it. The supervisor for my PhD work does a lot of work with country music and gender representation. In that industry, they face a similar lack of female songwriters, but industry-wide conversation has led to immense pressure on record labels and publishers to support the work of women. They still have a long way to go, but the conversation is starting. I think we need a similar push from within the worship music industry. By expressing that publishers and record labels need to be producing more work by women, we can start to push for an industry-wide evaluation of why these numbers are so skewed against women. So how can you support women songwriters and be part of the conversation? First, you can lead and sing songs by women. I've created a list that includes songs by women where they are either a writer in collaboration or the solo writer. I encourage you to listen to the songs of these women and find some that you could sing in your congregation. I want to familiarize you with this list now to help you understand and know their names and background. This list is by no means exhaustive, rather it gives you a sense of some of the women who are writing the church's song. Jenny Lee Riddle wrote the widely popular hit Revelation Song and now works as a speaker inspiring songwriters across the US. Darlene Zesch was an early champion of female songwriters as a lead worship leader for Hillsong Australia. Her song Shout to the Lord is still on the CCLI Top 100 27 years after it was written. Chrissy Nordhoff wrote Your Great Name with her worship pastor in 2008, and it was performed most famously by Natalie Grant. She's the founder of Brave Worship, which seeks to empower women songwriters. Brooke Ligertwood is the woman who appears on the current CCLI Top 100 list the most. She is very successful as one of the lead worship leaders for Hillsong Church in Australia. One of her early songs, Hosanna, is still widely sung. Linda Shazo has written many songs beloved by the church, many of which have been included on recordings by Integrity Music. One of her CCLI hits is More Precious Than Silver. Amy Grant has been referred to as the queen of Christian pop and has written she's crossed over into secular popular music. Her song Thy Word was written in 1984 and is still sung today. Alyssa Smith is a songwriter and worship leader with Upper Room. Her song Surrounded is incredibly rare by virtue of it being written by a solo woman, something that has only happened a handful of times on the CCLI lists, especially in recent years. Leslie Jordan is a Nashville-based songwriter who is part of the duo All Sons and Daughters. Their song Christ Be All Around Me is based on the prayer of St. Patrick. Since that ensemble disbanded, she has been working on solo projects. Katie Torwalt is a songwriter with her husband Brian. They lead worship with Jesus Culture in Sacramento, California. Their song Holy Spirit is widely sung. Jen Johnson is the co-founder of Bethel Music with her husband Brian. Their new song Goodness of God has gained significant traction. I also want to note that Brian Hain made a really wonderful list about a year ago with other female songwriters, and you can find that on the Center for Congregational Song blog. My list includes names that are found in my data set, usually from big name publishers, and his list includes some really amazing artists that are writing independently. The second thing you can do is support women songwriters on social media. This is one of the best ways to find out when new music is coming out from women songwriters, and it gives them a larger platform. Most of the women on the list above have active Instagram accounts, and following them is a great way to support them. The accounts Women Who Worship, Women in Worship, and Brave Worship offer great summaries of new music by women as well. The third thing you can do is buy and stream music by women. When women songwriters release new songs, watch the YouTube video or stream their song on Spotify or Apple Music. Specifically, check out the Women Who Worship playlist on Spotify. When I last checked, it had over 7 hours of music led by women. Note that some of it is written by women, while other songs on the list are just performed by women. It is a helpful resource for becoming familiar with the key women songwriters today, including their new music. Finally, the fourth thing you can do is talk about it. Share about the problem on social media, talk with your congregation about it. Let them know that their worship leader cares about elevating the voices of all of God's children, and that their church is one that strives to dismantle barriers. Raise awareness about the imbalance. Support existing initiatives that are aiming to start the conversation. The power to start the conversation lies with those involved in collaborations, both publishers and artists. The key to changing statistics lies with worship planners and listeners. Listeners must be mindful of where their music comes from, and worship planners should intentionally try to sing songs by women in corporate services. With further research, intentional conversation, and honest reflection, we can begin to see positive change on the CCLI Top 25 lists. This conversation is one that involves all of us, and it is our responsibility to engage it. I hope that this presentation has provided you with resources to consider how to begin having conversations about the importance of including the voice of women songwriters in our church's song. Along with including songs by women, we also need to be attentive to the voices of artists of color, another area that is incredibly lacking. Join me in seeking justice for our church's song and elevating the voices of diversity of our siblings in God's family. Thank you for listening, and please be in touch with any comments or questions. I would love to hear from you.